Hello and welcome back to the F2 show. Here we go then, 14 rounds, 28 races, 22 drivers, all starting from 0 points, all thinking that they have an opportunity to impress this season. Joining me to delve into what's to come for this season is Formula 2 commentator Alex Jacques, WTF1 writer Hannah Pruffock and Inside F2 writer Lawrence Griffin. Coming up on the show then, we look ahead to what's set to be a thrilling season opener in Bahrain. Who are the main championship contenders? We discuss all, and we answer your questions ahead of this weekend. All right, let's get stuck into it then. Alex, going to come to you first. Great to have you with us. You obviously are out in Bahrain at the moment for the Formula One test. Are you still out there?
I am still out here and dealing with some really interesting Wi-Fi, as you guys, I liked the intro the second time nearly as much as I did the first, my friend. So well done to you. No, great to be with you. Really looking forward to the new season.
Good. And yes, it was my next question really. How excited are you for the new season? And what are you looking forward to most about the new season?
I'm looking forward to seeing the format go back to basically how it should be, and whether we're going to get a rookie champion, whether it's time for the second year as your likes of Pourchaire or Lawson, or whether it's going to be an old timer, which we haven't, not an actual old time, but you know what I mean, because we haven't seen that for a long time, and I'm intrigued to see what we're going to get in terms of the mix of the narrative for the season.
Yeah, we have had floods of questions in, by the way, when we put this out to our followers about any questions. We had floods coming in. I'm going to ask as many of them as possible. But one of them was about the format. So Adrian King on Twitter asked, do you think the series will benefit from reverting back to the 2 race per weekend format?
Yeah, they will, because we had something that I've never really seen before in Formula 2, and not so much in Formula 3, because that is 30-car madness. But in Formula 2, we were getting drivers thinking about later in the weekend, and the joy of it, is the immediacy of the move, and that your talent, you get 45 minutes of practice and then it start performing. It's not 45 minutes of practice, have a warm-up race and then get into it. And at certain points of last year, not always, but certain points of last year, that's what it felt like. So back to what F2 has been phenomenal at in the past, that one practice session, thrilling qualifying, and then 2 races that mean a lot. And it's interesting that they've swapped around with the points, and they've changed the weighting a little bit. So I'm really pleased they've done that.
Yeah, definitely a good move. I think we can understand why they gave it a go last season. But yeah, I think this format, everyone's looking forward to going back to it, aren't they? At Zoe Does F1 on Instagram asked, which of the circuits are you most looking forward to returning to after a year off? And is it potentially a new circuit, Imola, Zandvoort, for example? What one are you looking forward to most this season?
I'm really, really looking forward to going to Imola. I think that's going to be really, given how much F2 loves going 4 wide, the idea of doing that into Tamburello and Formula 2, that's super exciting. That's an amazing racetrack. That racetrack with fans will be incredible. And yeah, great that we're getting a broad array of circuits. Especially given that we could grow from 13 rounds that we have listed at the moment to 14. That would be, that's the largest ever F2 season, and the venues that are on that calendar are pure motor racing venues. So very excited, but I think Imola's top of the list for me.
Good. And a really competitive field this year, Hannah, by the way. Welcome, Hannah Lawrence, to the show. Obviously, we've spoken in the post-testing show that we did last week about, how competitive this grid is. Is this one of the most competitive grids we've seen in the modern era, Hannah?
I would say it's got to be one of. I think the beauty of Formula 2 is the fact that every single season without fail, you've got a dynamic grid of incredibly talented and competitive drivers able to fight at the forefront. And potentially there's multiple drivers every season that could merit having an F1 seat. The interesting dynamic, I would say, from this year compared to maybe the past couple of years is that balance between the amount of returning drivers and rookies. I'd say it's more of an even split. And also I think it's less easy to assess who the front runners would be. Obviously, past couple of years, you'd maybe say 4 or 5 drivers with the potential for the championship. This time around, off the top of my head, I can think of about 8 to 10. And also with the Van Amersfoort joining Formula 2 as well, we don't know how they'll get on. Could we see, for example, Jake Hughes bringing up a surprise championship contention, we don't know. So I'd say we've got probably a very thrilling season ahead with a lot of battles up and down the grid.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And reigning team champions Prema, obviously they're fielding an all new lineup this year in the form of Jehan Daruvla, Formula 3 champion Dennis Halger. Nice little mix there. It's a strong lineup, but how do you rate their chances this season, Lawrence? Is this a case of being Jehan's last shot at a title, maybe, whereas Dennis Halger maybe has a little bit more time on his side?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it is Jehan Daruvla's last shot, really. He's improving as he gains more experience. He has shown some really great performances last year, 5 podiums and 2 wins last season. But again, we speak about it so often, it's the consistency that you need to win in this series. I think maybe the format change will help him a little bit in that, getting those victories linked up throughout the season as opposed to just every now and then. He had a good patch of form. He had good performances in Monza and in Sochi, which were next to each other, but so many weeks apart last year. So, hopefully he can build on that. He was beaten by his teammate last year, which is not what you want. But he really is talented and he is experienced. And this year is a phenomenal opportunity for him. He's racing with Prema, who are last year's champions. That should be the best seat in Formula 2 as it goes. There can't really be a better opportunity for him than this. Dennis Halger will present a challenge for him. He's come through the ranks, come up through F3, and he was electric last season racing in Formula 3. And we have seen drivers come up in their rookie season from Formula 3 and blow the competition away. That's what Piastri did last year in that same Prema seat. And so I think you'd be foolish to say that Halger is not capable of doing the same this year. But that said, if Daruvla can perform against him really well, then that will add even more credibility to his name. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they can both perform together.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting into that inter-team battle at Prema. Théo Pourchaire showed glimpses of his talent last season. He was superb in Monaco, dominant in the sprint race in one of the sprint races in Monza. He's the highest returning driver this season, Alex. Is he one of the favourites for the title, if not the favourite?
Definitely one of the favourites. Because that season lasted for approximately 3 years last year, it had the strange thing in that I kind of feel that it allowed the drivers that had built momentum, suddenly your momentum disappeared again. And I think the one thing we saw him flourish with was a 70-day season, getting stronger and stronger and stronger in Formula 3. Of course, the gap in races allowed him to bounce back from the broken wrist. Monaco, he looked absolutely unbeatable. But I think he needs a good start. I think if he gets the groundwork done nice and early on, he doesn't need another Formula 3 outrageous comeback. He doesn't need sporadic flashes and build into the season. I think he needs a foundation to build on. Same goes for Liam Lawson. There's no doubting these guys' talent, all right? There's no doubting their speed. But it's championship building. It's what Piastri was phenomenal at last year. It's what Schumacher was phenomenal at the year before. Not always being the fastest, but getting a good haul of points. Not, if you don't have the pace, can you be third? If you're, are you going to fall off the podium if you're not the fastest that day? That's what makes a difference between a champion and someone who wins 4 races and doesn't find themselves in the top 3, which is very weirdly with Formula 2 is surprisingly easy to do with the sprint. So yeah, it's all about the start for me this year. I think that the opening rounds are more important than they have been for many a year.
Let's talk about Liam Lawson then, Hannah. Obviously, solid season last season, as Alex has said. Potentially, and we've spoken about this on the show as well, potentially an AlphaTauri seat opening up if Pierre Gasly moves on. Will he take that approach? Will he go down that line of, right, I'm just going to collect as many points as I can across the rounds, not necessarily go for wins every time, but just collect the points that he needs to get in the top 3, top 5 of the championship and collect those super license points?
I would say probably for every single Formula 2 driver, Liam Lawson included, it's kind of the whole motto of consistency is key, that for them. But you could never tell a racing driver that they're not going to go for wins. They're ultimately going to be out there pushing it as hard as they can. But I think for Lawson, it presents an interesting dynamic of the sense that possible AlphaTauri drive, he's already been lined up for an FP1 appearance within the season, and having that rookie element of having to have at least 2 rookie drivers fielding in an FP1 practice puts so much more focus on F2 this season, because it shows that there's going to be a clear breeding ground and a potential couple of seats opening up for them. I think as well with the season, as Alex touched upon, the fact that the difficulties in drivers building momentum, switching back to the old calendar as well, does have the element of it's less detrimental if a weekend doesn't go your way. For Lawson, splitting the season over 13 rounds rather than 8 means if he has, say, a bad Baku, it's not going to ruin his championship chances. Whereas if you look at, say, with Joe last year, the fact that he struggled to score in Baku and Silverstone until he won the feature race absolutely derailed his championship up until that point. And I feel like for Lawson, it's going to be one of them situations of looking towards that summer break. They'll have 9 rounds before they hit the summer break, before they head to Belgium. That means he needs to be in the top 3 of the championship by that point if he wants to secure a seat. Potentially top 5 maybe, but also for him, it's going to be, even if he doesn't win the championship, being that top Red Bull junior, he can't afford to be falling behind the likes of Vips, or especially Halger with being a rookie, because we know how brutal that Red Bull junior program is. They've gotten to the point now they'll have 5 juniors in F2 this season. Someone's probably going to get cold, so Lawson will just be out there trying to maximize every potential he can.
I'm no detective, but you know, Carlin very strong in Bahrain every single season. Liam Lawson won the opening rounds or the opening race of last season. Could be a good, it could be what he needs, isn't it? A good start to the season. Let's wait and see. Let's talk about his teammate, his former teammate, Lawrence, Yuri Vips. 3rd season in Formula 2, 2nd full-time season. Stayed with high tech, familiar surroundings. Title challenge, possibly, potentially.
He's definitely one of those many drivers that are in contention this year. There's no doubt about that. Exactly as we've already said, he is one of those drivers that, again, needs to convert wins into, as Alex says, championship building, which is that real key. But he has shown his talent time and time again. He was only the 2nd driver last year to win more than 1 race in the same weekend. Only he and Piastri managed that. And with the challenge that the format posed last year, that was really impressive. Although those were his only 2 wins. So it's repeating that throughout the season, which will be the key. He is the 2nd highest returning driver last year. You know, Pourchaire rather is the highest returning driver from last year, and he is rightly one of the favourites for the title. But if you're using that logic, then Vips also has to be right up there. And he remains in the same team. Is that an advantage? Is it an advantage for Lawson going to Carlin? You know, new surroundings. He might be able to pick up new things from that team that he might not have otherwise. That is one point of view. I think also the stability will help him. He's familiar with his surroundings. He knows the team. He'll have more knowledge. He'll have more ways to direct the setup of the car to make sure he gets the best performance. And with somebody else coming in, that is his team now. He is in charge. And he should be the front runner going into this season. So absolutely, he can push on for the title, but he will have to outcompete some phenomenal talent amongst the other Red Bull juniors. As Hannah said, it is an incredibly competitive environment. So let's see how he does.
High tech could be a really, really strong lineup this season if Marcus Armstrong can perform like we know he can as well. Could be a really good little inter-team battle as well there. Frederick Vesti, obviously a Mercedes junior driver. We know that Mercedes, they tend to focus their attention on one driver rather than going down the Red Bull approach or the Ferrari approach of having multiple drivers, Alpine as well. How much would that benefit him this season, Alex? And could he be a bit of a dark horse? Maybe not for the championship, but definitely for some really good finishes this season.
Frederick Vesti's got a lot of talent. He's shown that in Formula 3. I mean, parts of the Formula 3 season last year for Vesti, I was watching through my fingers because he always had pace and then something would go wrong or there'd be an issue. If you had an issue in qualifying last year, it was almost awkward on the microphone having to say something. It was like, well, you didn't want to say that's their weekend over, but it was their weekend over. So, yeah, it was a really, really tough one. The Mercedes backing. Mercedes don't tend to back drivers unless they really believe in them. That's a program that's taken a long time to kick on. But if you have been part of that program, you found yourself long-term futured up in Formula One, to use a terrible sentence, but you know what I mean. So the point is that you get, in my experience, one free hit if you're linked to a Formula One team generally. Vesti's season last year was not to a standard of an F1 junior program. Now, he's a really bright guy, he's a really cerebral guy. He would have known that at the time. He wouldn't have needed a text message from a Supremo to say, get it together. He is a really, really bright guy as well as a fast driver. So he knows that his joke has been used up. So, you know, the contending for wins is the minimum that he needs if he's going to stay with Mercedes. But don't be surprised to see it turned around, and don't be surprised for him to just click with. Remember, this is a guy who had a chance to step up at the end 2 seasons ago. Had a chance to step up to Formula 2. Maybe overthought it. I don't know. You'll have to ask him. Maybe overthought it, and he went along the line of, there are still things I need to improve about my driving, and I can win the Formula 3 title, and then it's better to bounce in as champion. Maybe he overthought it. Maybe you should have just made that leap. That luxury isn't there anymore. So we'll find out whether it was the right option, but he's got to make a fast start.
Would be nice as well to have 2 ARTs competing for wins regularly, because the second seat's been a bit cursed over the last couple of years, isn't it? So let's wait and see on that one.
You said that, by the way, before anyone sends me the old block caps email.
Yeah, I said that. Yeah, that was a Fraser comment. Loads of drivers we could speak about. I haven't got enough time to speak about all of them, but one I did want to speak to you about, Alex. Chembolik Bassi, first Formula One esports driver to compete in a Formula One feeder series category. How good is it to see him making his debut, and what can we expect from him this season?
Yeah, Jem has an amazing backstory, doesn't he? In that he's a marketeer's dream, because one thing that esports desperately want is a real world link, and he comes into a team that on their day put it all together. They can absolutely be contending for podiums, and he has a huge opportunity and an enthralling opportunity to show what can be done. And we've seen it occasionally at the Race of Champions, the odd giant killing act for drivers who have come from the esports background. But this is not just a tournament. This is not just a few chances, as great as that contest is in the winter usually. But this is 28 races potentially on the Grand Prix weekend, with a proper team, with a phenomenally powerful car. He could be a real pioneer in this field if it goes well. And it's important that if it doesn't click immediately, they give him time and they breathe and they get him up to speed. And I genuinely really can't wait to see what we get, but it's an amazing opportunity for him.
Really exciting, and they're looking forward to see what he can do. Right, as I said, then we had an influx of questions for Alex when he was announced that he was coming on the show, so I'm going to try and go through as many of them as possible. First and foremost, at ultimate_Carlin_fan on Instagram asked, how do you remember or identify all of the drivers that you're commentating on? Do you have any tricks? And Ian Hack on Twitter builds on that and says, yeah, how do you identify drivers on lap 1, particularly in Formula 3, for example, when there's 30 drivers in the field? How do you do it, Alex? What's your trick?
With extreme difficulty is the honest answer. I don't really know how to explain lap 1. It either works or it doesn't. You can practice almost every other aspect of the job. Not that you would, but if you needed to, you could go through certain scenarios. But lap 1 is thrilling, irritating, and complex in equal measure, because you are just living on your instincts. You're doing everything you can to identify as many drivers as possible without it sounding like a horse race. That's what happens when lap 1 is. So the fears with lap 1 is that it sounds like a horse race, or and you're flying in way too much information for anyone to possibly ever follow along with, or you've completely called the wrong drivers at the wrong point, and you know it, and the audience knows it, and there's no chance to reboot the joy of live TV. Thankfully, I reckon you get one shocker a year. But yeah, just imagine that you're trying to just imagine that you're trying to describe what's happening on a fruit machine whilst it's spinning. And that's the closest thing I can get to describing how you do opening laps with certainly Formula One, because it's so fast. But the numbers made Formula 3 tough. And Formula 2 is okay, because you know that they're going to settle down eventually. So you know that you're in for like half a lap of overtaking chaos at the start. But yeah, it's you just have to hope you have a good day, is the short answer.
Ian says that you do an incredibly good job to be so accurate, and I agree with that. So well done for that. Just a sports fan blog on Instagram asks, what made you want to become a commentator? Where did it start?
I liked how Murray Walker did it, and I thought that looked like a better alternative to getting a proper job. Is the truth? Yeah, I discovered Formula One by accident, flicking through the channels as a 10-year-old. It wasn't on in my house. I love the theatre of it. I love the way the TV broadcast wrapped around this incredible racing spectacle, and flirted with a few other careers, and I've been lucky to do some other stuff. But I always wanted to do it. And I think you get two types of commentator. I think you get the commentator who, let's be honest, wants to be a racing driver, can't do it, and then repositions themselves as a broadcaster. And then you get the commentator who's wanted to do it for a really long time. And I fall into that category.
You're the latter, and maybe Alex Brundle is the former. Is that right? Or
no, he's a proper racing driver. He can actually do it. If I say anything otherwise, he will. I shall get worse than a block cap's email. So you do get those who have convert themselves, and there's nothing wrong. There's no right approach, right? It's but yes, then you get the co-commentators, and they're a different kettle of fish entirely.
We had Alex on just at the end of last season, and very fascinating insight as well. What's he like in the box? Happy? Yeah, you enjoy commentating with him?
I love commentating with that man. Yeah, I do. He's incredibly talented, and yeah, if the Brundles ever start commentary school, then we're in trouble. So yeah, that's the nature of it. Although I have to say, a lot of last year, he's so good. I wasn't always in the box with him. We were doing a lot of the commentary, like we're talking now, over Zoom. Yeah. So the guy is remarkable in that he can put up with that, and thankfully we can knit it together to sound semi-coherent some of the time.
It's very good. I was shocked when I found out you were in completely different countries. So kudos for that. At Lewis_Flitney19 on Instagram asks, do you have any tips for anyone aspiring to be a commentator?
Say yes to every opportunity you get. If you can, afford to take jobs for free, occasionally do, but definitely ask to get paid. Don't try and make money at the start. Try and build a show reel. Try and get a body of work. Try things out. Identify who you like as a broadcaster. Then identify why you like them, and then make all of your mistakes in front of the smallest audience possible. All right. Try and take any gig going, but try and get as much experience as young as possible and build up and take all the opportunities, and try and be the person at the end of the phone who's the answer to, are you free this weekend, when a producer's just been left in the lurch on a Friday night. And there are lots of opportunities to do that. There's lots of opportunities with esports as well, but build that show reel. And then be aware that one day you're going to have to push it in front of a producer's nose, and they're going to have to be impressed. So keep that barely in mind, and then hope for a huge amount of luck, basically.
Alex Jacques, what a man. That's inspiring, that is. Lawrence, have you got a question for Alex?
Yes, I do. Obviously, we get to hear your commentary, but we don't get to see a lot of what goes on behind the scenes. So
that's a good thing, Lawrence, believe me.
So I wanted to ask, what part of a commentator's work do you feel goes largely unnoticed?
Well, I think probably a good thing, but if you're doing it well, the good thing is that you wouldn't notice the prep. It would feel conversational, and it wouldn't feel like, and the great thing about social media is, if you're making a point too many times, I think once I said Artem Markelov was runner-up to Charles Leclerc, maybe 3 times in a weekend, and people were writing it in block caps. And I was like, I know, guys, I know. I don't know what happened when I printed my notes off. My other RTM information is not here. So the prep is very important, and introducing it where it doesn't feel like prep is important. But yeah, that's not the glamorous part of the job, but there has to be a reason that they're paying you the money, right? Because experience takes you a long way. You eventually go through quite a lot of these scenarios that you could experience, so you roughly know how to anticipate, and then it turns into a little bit of muscle memory. But you've got to have the prep, you've got to put the graft in, and yeah, that part is largely unnoticed. But fail to do it at your peril, because the reason you do the prep is so that you can totally be free on air to notice that someone's gone off at turn 9, and you get there, and then the gallery can get there. And the less you're processing in real time, the more you can notice things on the play-by-play.
Fail to prepare, prepare to fail.
Perfectly put.
We'll see
a lot more succinctly as well. As you notice, I bang on too much. So.
We'll see who's prepared for this weekend in Bahrain.
Yeah, can't wait.
Segue there.
I like
it. Hannah, did you have a question?
Yeah, on kind of a more light-hearted note, we've seen some amusing moments in F2 over the years, but what's been the funniest, almost random moment you've had to commentate on?
Funniest, almost random moment. That's a good question. I mean, every time Valsecchi was in the commentary box, shenanigans ensued. I mean, all sorts used to happen with him. But in terms of, I try to be quite kind to the drivers, it just generally as a rule, because they're putting their necks on the line and I'm not. But there've been some 6 to 15 point turns in Baku sometimes where I'm like, you are being kind to the drivers. Don't be mean to the drivers. So that's pretty daft. And yeah, sometimes you're looking at barrier repair and you're like, what have I've made terrible life choices, you know. So some of my friends are actually serious journalists, and or make documentaries that are important, and you're here talking about a tire barrier repair at turn 5. So it can get a bit existential at that point. But no, there's often, I think the daftest thing was we got fogged off, didn't we, at the Nürburgring a couple of years ago, and we got the call through, and they were like, oh, by the way, this was for F1 TV, and they said, oh yeah, by the way, contractually, because the other broadcasters might pull away, you have to carry on. So you're doing all of practice, and by the way, the medical helicopter won't be taking off, so good luck to you. And we were commentating on people dancing in the grandstand. So, and then one of the producers told my co-commentator that I'd been a dancing champion as a kid, which was a lie. And I was just like, again, what am I doing in my life? This doesn't make any sense. So yeah, that is probably the daftest thing I've ever commentated on.
Love that. And a few more because we're running out of time. Very random one from Timo Albers Daily. He asked, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or a horse-sized duck? Can I just say at this point as well that Inside F2 doesn't condone any animal cruelty, and that I'm sure Alex wouldn't fight a duck or a horse. But Alex, yeah, over to you.
No, I would. No, I would. I know I look like a reasonable human being, but no, I'd probably go for the duck-sized horse. I think the idea of, why not? I mean, I'm pretty short, so my chances aren't great either way. So bring on the big object.
Love that. Good stuff. And I'm sure you've seen the question flying around on social media recently. Are you a wheels man or are you a door man?
Wow. I'm gonna go door.
You're gonna go door. More doors in the world than wheels. That's surprising from a man who's in the paddock, and there's wheels left, right, and centre in the paddock. I agree with you. I think there's doors. We won't get onto that conversation. Right, back to the Formula 2 stuff. A few quick fire questions to round this one up. Hannah, one word answer, please. Who will be on pole position this weekend?
Lawson.
And I'm more impressed at the fact that she's managed a one-word answer, because that's very rare of Hannah. Who will be one to watch this weekend, Alex?
Wow. Okay. I can't believe the slander I've heard. My word. Sorry, was it poll?
Who's one to watch this weekend?
One to watch this weekend. I am looking forward to seeing how Dennis Halger does on debut, because if it goes well, they're not going to panic, but they're going to take notice.
I think Oscar Piastri's reset the game in terms of rookies entering the sport, hasn't he? So, yeah, we'll see how that one goes. And Lawrence, who will be leading the championship at the end of the weekend?
And I have to jump on Hannah's bandwagon and say Lawson.
Liam Lawson, early favourite. Good stuff. Love that. Okay, that's all we have time for today. My thanks to Alex, to Hannah, and to Lawrence for joining us. And thank you to you guys at home for watching as well. If you've enjoyed the show, please make sure you give us a like, subscribe for more Formula 2 content. Get your words out, Fraser. Hashtag the F2 show if you want to get involved in the conversation. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.